Hello, welcome to my desk here in Tuscany, Italy, Aulla, a little mountain village. Today I want to talk about something from the Torah, the Hebrew patriarch Enoch, or in Hebrew, Enoch, the son of Jared. Now, in popular culture, let's see an X-Files episode. Right, Signs and Wonders. Right, this is about a Pentecostal snake-handling church. All right, the minister is Enoch O'Connor, or the reverend is Enoch O'Connor. Well, how do we know this just isn't a coincidence? But it's the producers or the writers, screenwriters, intentional allusion to the book of Genesis, Bereshit, the Hebrew patriarch Enoch. This is because Mulder and Scully get called in to investigate the death of one said Jared Chirp. All right. So Jared is the name of the father of the Hebrew prophet or patriarch Enoch. All right. So this is an instance of the Hebrew patriarch Enoch in popular culture, right? And in the Hekkelot literature, the prophet Enoch in this text, so-called the third book of Enoch, written in Hebrew, right? Enoch ascends and he's transformed into a fiery entity named Metatron, this angelic entity. Well, this angelic entity, Metatron, shows up in the popular culture, right, as an angel in the movie Dogma, which was more popular years back than it is now. In any case, enough of popular culture. What I want to show you is that somehow, and I don't claim to know everything about this or even much at all about it, but somehow I believe there's evidence for holding that Enoch is somehow implicated or implied, let's say on a subtle esoteric level, hidden level, right, in behind the first account of creation, right, in the Torah, in the first book, Genesis, or in Hebrew, Bereshit. The first account of creation runs from chapter 1, verse 1, into chapter 2, and ends at verse 3. All right, so I want to run through some numerical aspects that is going to prepare the way to introduce Enoch a little later. So the first verse, the opening line of the first account of creation, right, in English, let's see, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, right? So Bereshit bara Elohim in Hebrew, opening it up. One might say, well, aren't the chapter and verse divisions just medieval inventions for some Christian bishop or whatever? Yes, they are, but you can't forget that there were earlier divisions. You look at a traditional Torah scroll, and you'll see Masoretic divisions. And there are portions, right, or paragraphs, if you will, marked in a Torah scroll or in any other book of the Tanakh, indicated by spaces, blank spaces, right? And so we have paragraphs or portions of text separated like this. And in each one of them, the Masoretic scribes have divided the sentences differently, but they indicate the divisions between the different sections of each paragraph, if you will, by means of what in English would look like a colon, two vertically arranged dots. We call this a pasuk, or the plural pasukim, or verse and verses in English. So but these are largely not medieval. They're not necessarily the inventions of the Masoretic scribes, the later Masoretic scribes, because if you look at the manuscripts of the Dead Sea Scrolls, for instance, you'll see that a lot of these separations in the text and a lot of these pasuk divisions are indeed ancient, and they have been inherited by the Masoretic scribes, by the rabbinic scribes of an earlier period, right? And so you'll see in the first pasuk, in the first account of creation, you'll see that it comprises 7 words in Hebrew, right? And most scholars would say that, well, this is an intentional allusion to the structure of the narrative that then unfolds, because God creates everything in heaven and earth in 6 days, and then this is all crowned with the summit of creation on the seventh day when God rests, right, on the Sabbath. And so the Sabbath is the apex, is the summit of creation, in a way, the very reason, in a certain sense of viewing it, right, for creation. Now, so what does this have to do with Enoch? All right, well, this first account of creation, first pasuk or first verse, 7 words, the entire account comprises 469 words. Well, that's a multiple of 7. 7 times 67 equals 469. So again, the text, right, there in a subtle way again, right, it's being patterned numerically according to 7, right, to hint at what we call the surtext or the open text, the plain text, right, because the plain text is a story about a 7-day creation. All right, so now, if we move on, there's a second account of creation that then picks up at chapter 2, verse 4, and then runs to the end of what most people will know as the end of chapter 3. Right? So it's the story of Adam and Eve and the fruit and the 2 trees and all of that. All right, now after that, we get to the 4th chapter of Genesis, the story of Cain and Abel. And we see some number of symbolism there, I believe, too. And if you look at this text, you'll see that chapter 4, or this portion in the Torah, comprises 26 pasukim, 26 verses. Well, 26 is the numerical value of the tetragrammaton. That is the 4-letter name of God, which traditional Orthodox Jews do not pronounce. It's substituted with just saying the letters, Yod-He-Vav-He or Yud-Ke-Vav-Ke, to add a little more layer of protection against accidentally pronouncing the sacred name of God. Or you substitute it with Adonai. Now, could it be a coincidence? And why do we have reason to think that there are 26 pasukim in this portion in chapter 4? Do we have reason to believe this is an intentional hint at the numerical value of the tetragrammaton, which is usually rendered in English as Lord? Right? Yes, we do, because the final clause, the final statement of the final verse 26 says, and that is when humans began to call on the name Yod-He-Vav-He. Right? All right, so now I want to finally go to the next chapter. This is chapter 5, and it is a new portion in a Torah scroll because it's now a different subject, different topic. The theme is it's a genealogical table of 10 generations from Adam to Noah. So the 10 patriarchs, 10 main patriarchs are listed in there. In that list, the 7th patriarch is named Enoch. This is our Enoch. And scholars are in general agreement that because it says he lives 365 years, that this is an allusion to the solar calendar, because in later Jewish traditions, like the book of Enoch, the first book of Enoch, an Aramaic work, we have Dead Sea Scroll fragments in Aramaic, but the entire work survives only in an ancient Ge'ez or Ethiopic translation. And in there's an entire section on a book of astronomy, and it's all about the solar calendar. And so Enoch lives 365 years. So this is a hint at the Enochic solar calendar known from later Jewish tradition. Most scholars are going to agree that that number, 365, is an intentional numerical hint, right, at something, the solar calendar. Well, what most scholars are not aware of, I haven't seen it in the literature, is that if you take the trouble to count the words in that table, a genealogical table of the 10 ancestors, you'll find that it has a word total of 365. I don't think it's a coincidence. So it's a hint that Enoch is particularly important. He's one of the most important patriarchs in that genealogical list. And he is the 7th from Adam. Now, also reinforcing his importance is another fact. the first verse of that genealogical table is about Adam, and there are two instances of the mentions of Elohim, or as it's traditionally said, Elohim. But in other words, God. The Elohim is mentioned 2 times in the first opening verse, which mentions Adam. The name Elohim is then again mentioned in the account of Enoch. And the only other divine name is the Tetragrammaton that is mentioned in the entire list, and it's mentioned in the 10th generation, that is the mention about Noah. So Adam, the first, Enoch, the 7th, and Noah, the 10th, seem to be set apart, and they're special for some reason, because these divine names are mentioned in the context of their the genealogical record. Now, we see this number symbolism reaching from the beginning of Bereshit, from the first creation story, and this different types of number symbolism continues, right? So 7 for the first creation account. The story of Cain and Abel is 26, right? 26 verses hinting at the numerical value of the Tetragrammaton. Then chapter 5 comprises 365 words hinting at the 365 years that Enoch lived, hinting at the Enochic solar calendar, right? So those are all indications, I think, that these numerical, this interest in numbers is intentional, right? And referring to different things: the 7 days of creation, the 365 days of a solar year, the numerical value of the Tetragrammaton. But now I end with this observation. Enoch is so important, right? And he's the 7th from Adam, right? Well, 7, I believe it harks back to the creation account, the first creation account, and 6 days, and then God rests on the 7th day. So Enoch, the 7th, right, seems to be somehow implicated in that Sabbath. So there's probably a Sabbath symbolism that inheres in Enoch. Now, the name Enoch, right, this term and the cognate verb, right, in the Hebrew Bible is very, very rare. But when it is used, it's usually used for a house, right, or the temple, right? The dedication of the temple, that's what it would mean. Well, just so happens that in the Torah, the account of the building and the finishing of the mobile tabernacle in the wilderness, which is the precursor to this stationary temple in Jerusalem later. Scholars are well aware that the account of it is worded in such a way that it is intentionally linking itself back to the first creation story and to the creation story and to the finish of creation, right? And so could it be that Enoch, right, who is etymologically, the etymological meaning of his name is related to a dedication, right, of a building like a temple or a mobile tabernacle, right, is somehow implicated, right, in creation via this link, right, these many lexical links between the creation account in the Torah and the later account of the building and finishing and dedication of the mobile tabernacle in the wilderness. Is something to think about, that Enoch, a tremendously important figure in Jewish tradition, may be even more important than we've realized, if indeed his position as 7th implies that there inheres in him a Sabbath symbolism, the Sabbath being the 7th day, being the apex, the summit, for the reason almost for the creation, the glory, the crown of creation. All right, there's another point that I overlooked that I should address. That is, in the genealogical table of the 10 generations of patriarchs in Genesis chapter 5, we have, as I said, the divine name Elohim associated with the entries for Adam and for Enoch. But there's also one tetragrammaton associated with Noah, right? So all three of them, right, are the most important, together form the most important patriarchs in that list. Now, what is the relationship between Enoch and Noah? Well, if you think of the Babylonian flood story, the hero is Utnapishtim. Now, this Utnapishtim, this name is actually the name from which the Hebrew name Noah is derived. And you can find an article by Martin Schwartz of the University of California at Berkeley online. It's a PDF freely available on this subject. I believe it's called Qumran, Turfan, Arabic Magic, and Noah. And you can find it freely available as a PDF, as I said. So in the flood story, the Babylonian flood story, Utnapishtim is the master of the ark in the time of the deluge. But he survives the deluge and lives immortally. And of course, you will recall the hero, part divine and part human, Gilgamesh, the great hero, braves many dangers, right, to finally visit Utnapishtim and his wife, right, in order to try to obtain eternal life, the secret of immortal life. Of course, he fails famously. But anyway, so what has happened is that we can see that Utnapishtim's aspect or attribute of immortality has been assigned to Enoch in Genesis 5 in the genealogical table, and the attribute of master, Utnapishtim's attribute of the master of the ark, has been assigned to Noah. So this is how we can relate Enoch and Noah. Now, the 10 instances of the Tetragrammaton in the story of Cain and Abel harks back to the 10 instances of the phrase, "and God said," in the first creation account, which plays a very significant role in later Jewish tradition, as the 10 sayings, or the 10 words by which God creates heaven and earth. And these 10 instances of the Tetragrammaton in Genesis 4, the story of Cain and Abel, also then anticipate the 10 patriarchs in the genealogical table of the next Torah portion, which is the genealogical table, right, from Adam to Noah. And finally, in Genesis 5, in this genealogical table, the text interprets or hints at it implies that the meaning of the name Noah is rest or repose, right, which we can connect with the Shabbat, with Shabbos, with the Sabbath. But then Enoch is also, right, he's the seventh from Adam, so in him inheres this Sabbath symbolism connected to the solar calendar, so it's calendrical, so he's related to the Sabbath as such, and via the 52 Sabbaths, right, in the year, in the calendar year, in the solar year. So you can connect Enoch and Noah in that way as well. They're both related to the Sabbath. And with that, I'll conclude and thank you so much for listening to me. And be sure to support this channel if it brings something to you of interest. All right, and thank you until next time. All right? Goodbye. Take care.